Music theory with Microsoft Excel. Distance names versus interval names, making a better measurement system. This time looking at the minor modes, including the Aeolian mode, the Dorian mode, the Phrygian mode. So get ready and some coffee, because you ain't never seen rockin' unless you excel at rockin', and you do need Microsoft Excel to do the excelling part of the rockin' Excel rock. You're in Excel. If you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay, because we basically built this from a blank worksheet but started in a prior presentation. So if you want to build this entire worksheet from a blank sheet, you could begin back there, or just continue from this point forward constructing the current tables that we're on. If you do have access to this workbook, though, 4 tabs down below. Fretboard example practice blank, the fretboard tab having a simulated fretboard. We will refer back to the example tab having the finished product. The answer key, the practice tab, has pre-formatted cells, so you can practice the practice problem with less Excel formatting. But if you don't have any of that, that's okay, because we'll be working in the blank tab where we started from a blank worksheet, and we'll be continuing on with the blank part of the worksheet, this time practicing both our Excel skills and music skills at the same time. Let's go back to the fretboard to get an idea of what we will be doing. We're continuing on with our distance measurements, typically called the intervals, noting that the current naming convention kind of shoehorns us into thinking in a way that's not optimal. What is the optimal way? To be thinking of the fretboard as our map of the territory, like a globe has 7 continents on it. The destination locations has 5 non-continent locations, similar to the oceans. If we look at the globe from space, similar to our head, up above the top or low heavy E string at the top of the guitar, we can imagine the fretboard shifting around, rotating in a circle. We're going to name 7 different or 12 different degrees of rotation that it could take, and then we're going to give those a name. Those are the note names. So we can say that we're on the C major rotation, the 4. So that means I have to look here if I want to see where the continents are, which will all line up relative to that point, or relative to any point. It's just that by custom, we generally use the major key to name the rotation points. Once done, I don't want to name the continents by all of the rotation points, but rather by the continent names, which are equivalent to the Nashville number system, the 1 through 7, which are in essence the modes. The Ionian, the Phrygian, the Mixolydian, the Dorian, and so on and so forth. If this whole thing shifts up, the continents all shift up. The note names will differ. The relative scale degrees will differ, but the absolute continent names, the mode numbers, the Nashville number system will all be relative the same. It'll all be the same. That's the point. All right, so given that, we have a problem with the naming convention, because the scale degree forces us, when talking about distance, to pull us out of this idea, so that we have to use different scales, renumbering the system, renaming the continents. It's also a little bit confusing to understand exactly what is happening, particularly on the guitar, which is not laid out in just one line like the piano. So if I measure from this point to this point, I can measure it in terms of continents. We went 2 continents up, which I'm calling modal half steps, 2 modal half steps up, which would be 3 scale degrees if I make that the 1, which is I'm trying to avoid to do, or it's going to be including the oceans, ocean, land, 1, 2, 3, 4 notes up. So we can compare this then to our analogy over here, where we're going to say if we're on position 1 of the fretboard, fret 5 to 8, if we're in the major key, then we have the continents lined up similar to the globe here. So we have North America, the ocean goes to Europe, Asia, the ocean goes to South America, ocean, Africa, Australia, ocean, Antarctica, right? And then the ocean brings us back to North America. If I put those around in a circle, then again, if we go around the circle just naming the continents and not naming the oceans, we would have 7 continents that we can go around in a circle. Again, this is not a ranking type of thing. The numbers just happen to line up this way. So we're just saying it's going to go around 7. And then the oceans are going to basically be in the middle. So if I'm going, then let's start here from let's go to a minor mode. If I'm going, let's just say the 2. If I'm going from the 2 to the 4, then I could name that by the destination locations. I'm going from the South America to Australia. Now I can't go in the middle of the circle. I can't make a direct line here, but I have to go around the block. So that makes it easier for us. So we can say to get there, then I can go up 2 modal half steps or 2 continents up. Or if I include the ocean, the one that I don't stop in but go through, then it's going to be 1, 2, 3. So it's 3 equivalent to notes up, which would be 2 actual continents, which would be equivalent to the modal half steps up. That's the analogy we want in our mind. Now, what's the problem in the current system? They make this the 1, so I have to rename South America to Asia or whatever, or however you want to think about it, and then they're going to count from that as the 1. So the distance is no longer from this point, but adding this point. So if that's the 1, 2, 3, this would be the third of that 1. We don't need to do that. That's always off by 1. We should say, no, it's 1, 2 modal half steps up. And that way I don't have to rename the continent. And I should also be using terminology that's not simply based off of the major key, but rather it would be better if I name the node we are on and then the distance. So that's going to be the idea. Let's go to the blank tab. What we have done is we've started this. We started the normal we did all of the letters of the alphabet. We look at the major key. That's just the test key. Remember, this works for all 12 keys. It's just all the continents shift up. The perspective of the world rotating around doesn't change the relative positions. And the normal interval structure then is based on the major intervals. So that means that the majors and the perfects are in the intervals of the major key, and everything that's not in the major key is basically called minor, is the general rule. Then you could have some augmented or flats, but that's the general idea. Now the problem with that is it doesn't really give you the context, or one problem is it doesn't give you the context within the song, because I'd like to be able to say, hey, look, I want to know the node that I'm measuring from, and whether the position, the number of steps that I go from that node will land me in the ocean or not, right? That would be a better way to do it contextually, instead of having all of the other modes using an interval construction as compared to the major scale. You could still compare all the distances. That's fine. It's just that you would think that you would make the structure of how far you are going from a particular node, which is always one direction, clockwise, or later we'll talk about counterclockwise, but right now we're just talking forward or backwards. All right, so we compared then the Ionian and the Lydian and the Mixolydian. So now we're going to be comparing the minor modes. We're going to start out where we left off after the Mixolydian, the 5 mode, go into the 6 mode, which is the Aeolian mode, the most popular minor mode, otherwise known as the minor scale. And then we will go back adding cells after the Ionian, which is the major scale, to add the other 2 minor modes, that being the 2 mode Dorian, the 3 mode, and the Phrygian. First, let's hide some cells so that we can navigate in our worksheet a little bit better. I'd like to keep the half steps. I'm going to hide columns K and L so I can just see this column. So I'm going to right click and hide this column. So these are our conventional abbreviated names. And then I'm also going to hide everything after the Ionian. So let's actually hide all of this to the Mixolydian. Right click and hide. And so now I'm going to be just comparing this to the Ionian, which is basically the major scale, and to our normal abbreviated naming convention. All right, so I'm going to call this then an A for Aeolian, MR modal range, and then we're going to have the dollars or the number modal range, and then we're going to have, I'm just going to call it A for our new intervals. I'm going to make this black and white, go into the Home tab, Font Group. Let's make it black, white, Let's center it. I'm going to select these 3 columns and make them smaller, and then make them about as big as the largest one that we have highlighted. All right, so we're going to start off with the AA. So we're going from a modal range of an A to A. So we're on the Aeolian. So we're on the 6, and we're just going to stay on the 6. We didn't go anywhere then. From a Nashville number system, I'm going to call the modal range. We went from the continent of a 6 to the continent of the 6. All right, what about a distance range? Well, we went 0 note half steps from the node of the Aeolian, and also 0 if you want to measure in terms of the modal half steps. So we're going to say that's 0, 0. Okay, let's just first include the ones that are going to have even, that will be even, that are in the key that's going to land us on a land mass. So the next land mass after Aeolian is Locrian. So we have to go down here to go A-N to get to Locrian. In other words, if I'm on the Aeolian, it takes 2 steps to get up to Locrian. 2 note half steps. So I have to skip one. We're going to go 2 note half steps up from a modal range standpoint. That would be a 6 to a 7. So the 6 Aeolian to the 7 Locrian. From a distance standpoint, that would mean that we're going actually 2 up. So we're going 2 up from the Aeolian. And we can also say from a modal modal half step, that's going to be a 1 first modal half step, which would be the 2nd scale degree. So you can see it's called a 2 note away major 2nd. I'm going to call it a 2 note away Aeolian first modal half step, which would be the 2nd scale degree. So, okay, so that would mean, and you can see here, this is the weird one, because the Aeolian, you would think, would have a minor. So if you look at it just from the normal naming convention, which is based off the major scale, you would think the main minor would have a minor 2nd, but it doesn't. That's the one that is different. It still has a major 2nd. So you can see the naming convention still isn't quite perfect, because they basically just named everything off of the major scale and made everything else minor if it wasn't perfect, which would be the perfect 4th, the perfect 5th, and the perfect 1st. All right, but it would be easier to name it, hey, look, I'm just naming the intervals from this node, and then to be comparing the distances, right? So here's the Ionian, same distance from that landmass as if we go from the landmass of the Aeolian, and we still land on a continent. All right, let's go to the next one. So if I go to the Ionian, and we're on the Aeolian. So now we're going 2 up, which is going to be to the Ionian. So to go 2 up, if I'm on the Aeolian, it's going to be 1, 2, 3 notes up to get to the Ionian. So it's 3 notes up. Here's the 3 notes up. It's going to be an A to the I. That's the modal range. Those are the 2 continents we want to be getting to. So from a modal range Nashville number system, that would be the 6 to the 1, noting that if you count it on your fingers, it's 6 and then 6, 7, and then around to 1. So it's 2, because I'm not going backwards to 1. I could do that, but I'm going clockwise around the block to 1. So it's 2, a distance of 2 then. So then we're going to say distance-wise, what is that going to be? It's going to be a 3 note away from the node of the Aeolian, and it's going to be the 2nd modal half step, which would be the 3rd scale degree. So you can see over here, if you compare it, what we have over here is the 3 note away minor 3rd. Now, when they say minor 3rd, again, that kind of ties to the Aeolian. You think Aeolian, that's the minor scale, but the other 2 minor modes are the Dorian and the Phrygian. So it would be better to say by the mode. I'm saying this is what it is for the Aeolian mode. Now, that will be the defining factor for all of the minors, and that's the distinguishing factor for all of the majors. But the other intervals are not the same, right? So if I look at the Ionian, you can see that this lands us in the ocean. If I go 3 notes up from there, 1, 2, 3 lands me in the ocean. But if I go 3 notes up from the Aeolian, 1, 2, 3, then we're on a landmass, okay? So then next one. Now I want to go from the A to the D. So if I'm on the Aeolian, I'm going 1, 2, 3 up to get to the Dorian. If I'm on the Aeolian, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the distance to get to the Dorian. So I'm looking at the 5 here. I'm going to call this an AD modal range, the Aeolian mode to the Dorian mode. That's defining the two continents we're going to and from and to, which would be in a number standpoint 6 to 2. So again, we're going around the horn 6, 7, 1, 2, a distance of 3 modal half steps. So then I'm going to say, all right, what's the full distance? It's 5 note half steps, A from the Aeolian node, and 3 modal half steps. That would be the distance, and we can see that that one is what we normally call a perfect fourth. So I'm calling it we call it a 5-note away perfect fourth. Conventionally, I'm going to call it a 5-note away Aeolian third modal half step, which would be the 4th scale degree. See, so distance term versus the scale degree. So that one's going to be the same from here, a 5-note away I3, same distance, and that's going to be one of our big important distances because it's one of the perfects. All right, and so that's going to be in most of the modes. Next, let's go from the A to the P. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 up. If I go A to the P, how many distance is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's 7 up. So if I go to my distance of 7 here, we're going to say that's going to be an AP. We're going to say that's going to be going from the 6 to the 3. So 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, right? 6, 7, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to say that it's going to be a distance of a 7-note away from the node of Aeolian, and it's the 4th modal half step, which means it would be the 5th scale degree. So conventionally, we call that a 7-note away perfect 5th. I would like to call it here a 7-note away Aeolian 4th modal half step, which would be the 5th scale degree. Now, again, that's the same on the Ionian. You can see same distance from that landmass, and that's because it's the perfect. So I would like to recognize that by the 7-note away and the 5-note away are prime distances that we want to keep important in our mind. We can designate that before they designated that by calling them perfect, but you don't really need to call them perfect. You're just like, hey, look, if you go a distance of 5 away or 7 away, those are very standard intervals. We should memorize it by the distances, right? That's the thing that should tell us. We should know it by the distance, right? Not necessarily by the name. Like the name should help us, but we should know the name is tied to the distance. The distance is the thing making the interval. All right, so let's say now we're going to go to the next one. So we're going to say if we're on the Aeolian, now we're going past the P. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we're going to the Lydian. So to the A to the Y in terms of half steps from the Aeolian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to get there. So we're going to be on the 8-note half steps, and we're going to call this an AY, Aeolian to the Lydian, which from a Nashville number would be the 6 to the 4. So 6 counting up, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means it's going to be an 8-note away A from the node of the A, 5th modal half step, which would be the 6th scale degree. So we typically call that then an 8-note away minor 6 because it's not in the minor scale. I mean the major scale, therefore it would be in the minor. So we can see it here that it's not in the Aeolian because we have a 0.5 distance, but it is in the minor, the main minor scale. It's not in all of the other minors, the Dorian and the Phrygian. So we'll get to that shortly. So I would like to call it, again, by distance, it's an 8-note away. I know it's a minor distance, typically, or typical to the minor by the distance, by the 8-note away. That's the thing that tells me it should be a 9-note away if it was in the major, right? So that would be, we want to know it by the distance. All right, and then we're going to go, okay, the next one. So now we want to go from A to X. So that's going to be all the way around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait, let me do that again. From A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 distance, 6 modal half steps. If I go from the A here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have a distance of 10. So I'm looking at 10, and we're going to call that then the AX, Aeolian to Mixolydian, modal range. So from a number standpoint, that would be going from the 6 mode to the 5 mode, again counting around in a circle, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a distance of 6. So we're going to say that then is going to be a 10 note away, a 6th modal half step, which would be the 7th scale degree. So you can see here it's a 10 note away minor 7. That's the normal naming convention. But from a scale degree standpoint, and we know, it should be a 10 note away Aeolian 6. You can see that on the Ionian, then if you went that distance on the Ionian, you'd land in the ocean. If you go that distance from the landmass of the Aeolian, then you don't land in the ocean, right? That's the point. All right, okay, so then let's go up and then add the ones in between here. So we're gonna say, I'm gonna call this an AA plus. This is the one that lands us in the ocean, going from 6 to the 6.5. To the 6.5. So I'm going to call that a distance of 1 node away from the Aeolian node, 0.5. Meaning I'm going from the Aeolian here, and I just go boom, 1 up, doesn't get me to the next node, doesn't get me to the D, it just gets me just past the Aeolian. Similarly, with the A to the I, if I go to the AI plus, now we're going to what I would call the 6 to the 1.5, which would mean we're going 4 up from the Aeolian node, 4 note half steps, which gets us to 2.5 modal half steps. In other words, if I go from the Aeolian and I go 4 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, then it's going to land me in the ocean, right? We just went just past the Ionian. Okay, so then let's go to the next one and say we're going to go to an AD plus. So we're going to call this then a 6, let's say 6 to 2.5. So now we're going to go 6 notes up, and we're going to call that an A 3.5, meaning the 3.5 modal half steps up, which is going to land us in the ocean. So if we go 6 up from the Aeolian, we're going to say, okay, we're on the Aeolian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to land us in the ocean right after the Dorian node. Lands us in the ocean right after the Dorian. And then let's go to the AY, and that's going to be the AY is, wait a sec, AY plus. Let me fix that here, AY plus. And that's going to be going to then the 6 to the 4.5, and that's going to be saying that we're going 9 notes away from the A 5.5 modal half steps. So if I go 9 notes away from the Aeolian, it lands me in the ocean. So if I'm on the Aeolian 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it lands me right after the Y, or the Lydian, into the ocean. All right, now let's say that we're on, the last one is an AX plus. So that's going to be going from the Aeolian 6 to the 5.5. That's going to be then an 11 note away, A from the A node 6.5 modal half steps, landing us in the ocean right after the Mixolydian. So if I go 11 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lands me in the ocean right after the Mixolydian. All right, so those are our main minors. Let's go ahead and make that green. I'm going to bold them. Let's bold them and make them. Have I been making all these green? I think I've been making these green. Okay, so now let's unhide. I'm going to select from Q to Z, right-click and unhide. And I'm going to add some cells in between the Ionian, because now I want to add and look at the Dorian. So I'm going to go from, I need to add 3 columns. So I'm going to select from R to T, right-click and insert. And then I would like to also compare that then to the Aeolian. So I'm going to delete, or not delete, hide from Mixolydian back, right-click and hide those. Don't delete them, hide them. And then we're going to start here and now look at this from the standpoint of the Dorian. So I'm going to call this then the Dorian, the Dorian modal, let's say modal range, which is the number modal range, And then we'll say this is just the D for that one. All right, so that's going to be it. Okay, so now we'll do the same thing. So the Dorian is once again a minor mode, but it doesn't have all the same intervals as the main minor. That's why this system over here doesn't really work, because it doesn't even really work on the minor, because you have that second that isn't really a minor second, and it certainly doesn't work on all of the modes because you can't follow the same convention of the minors being in all the minor modes and the majors being in all the major modes, right? So let's do the same thing from the perspective of the Dorian. So we're on the Dorian. Here's our Dorian. Let's say we go nowhere and we start in the same spot. That would just be going from D to D, point D to point D, from a modal range, the 2 to the 2. It didn't go anywhere. What would we call that? It would be a 0 node away from the Dorian node. 0 node away from the Dorian mode 0. So 0, 0 from the point of the two measuring perspectives, the modal, the node half steps and the modal half steps. Then I can say, well, what if I go up to the next node, from the Dorian to the Phrygian? How many distance is that in terms of half steps? 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2. 2 half steps up. So 2 half steps up would be here. I'm going to call that then a DP. So we're going from the 2, the Dorian is the 2, to the 3, which is the Phrygian. And what's the distance? Well, it's going to be 2 notes up, 2 note half steps from the Dorian node, which would be 1 modal half step, which means it would be the second scale degree. So now we're going to be, from this point, it's a 2 note away major second. So again, I'm in a minor mode, just like with the Aeolian mode, and I have, from the normal naming convention, a minor second. So which isn't that helpful. I mean, I have a major second in a minor mode, which isn't that helpful, right? So you might as well, you're going to have to memorize the distances anyways. You might as well memorize it from the perspective of the mode that we're in, right? So it's a distance of 2 notes away, which means it would be the first modal half step from that node, which from a scale degree standpoint would be the second, right? Okay, which is in the Aeolian or Ionian as well. So that's why you would normally call it a major second. But okay. Let's say we go up another one. So now we're on the Dorian and we go up 2. That would bring us to the Lydian. So I want to go to the DY. So the DY, how far is that? Dorian to Lydian, 1, 2, 3. So it's 3 notes up. Here's the 3 notes. So I'm going to say this is going DY, modal range. So from the number standpoint, that would be going from the 2 to the 4 distance. Okay, and what's the distance term? Well, now it's going to be a 3 note away D, second modal half step, which would be the third scale degree. So we normally call that a 3 note away minor third. You can see that distance here is also in the Aeolian mode. This mode should be similar to the Aeolian. It's not in the Ionian. If I went 3 up from the Ionian, I land in the ocean. That's why this is the distinctive interval for the minor modes. And it works when you think about this terminology, major and minor. But the third, although it's really important and it works there, it doesn't work anywhere else. And again, I want to know it by the distance. I want to know it by the distance, not the fact that it says major or minor, because that's not universal. It doesn't work in all the modes. So I'd like to know that, well, yeah, 3 notes away, that's in most of those are in the minor modes, right? That's the minor interval distance for the third or the second modal half step. All right, let's go to the node after that. So if I'm starting the Dorian and I go 1, 2, 3 up, I get to the Mixolydian. How far is that in distance? So if I'm on the Dorian and I go 1, 2, I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got to go up 5. So I'm going to start on the 5 here, and I'm going to call that a DX, modal range, Dorian to Mixolydian. From a number standpoint, that would be a 2, 5. From a distance standpoint, we would say that's a 5 node away from the D node, and then it would be a third modal half step, which would be the 4th scale degree. So we call that typically a 5 note away perfect 4th, but the 4th is a scale degree. I'd like to say it's 3 it's a distance of 3 modal half steps. You can see that's in the Ionian, and that's also in the Aeolian, because it's perfect, and therefore it's in most of the modes, but not all of the modes. All right, next one. So now if we go up again, I'm going to say from the Dorian, we're going to go up after the Mixolydian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 up. So that's going to give us to the Aeolian. So if I go from the Dorian to the Aeolian, how many notes is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's 7 up. So I'm going to go from the 7, that's the next one. And we're going to go DA modal range. So that's going to be the D is the 2 to the A, which is the 6. So we're going 2, 6 modal range, which would be a 7 note away from the Dorian node, 4th modal half step, which would be the 5th scale degree. We normally call that a 7 note away perfect 5th. But it's 4th modal half step away from whatever node. So we can go that distance 7 notes away from the Ionian and still not land on a continent. We will land on a continent as with the Aeolian, and that's because the perfects are going to be perfect. That means they're going to be in most of the modes. They're very steady and stable, but I want to know it by distance. How do I know it's perfect? Because it's 7 notes away. It's 4 modal half steps, which is a distance of 7 notes away. If it's 7 notes away, that's the distance that gives me that stable sound. All right, let's go to the one after the A. So if I'm on the Dorian, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would get me to the Locrian. So if I'm on the A and I go to the Locrian, how far is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait a sec. A to the I'm not on the A. I'm on the D. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9. So we're going to go on the 9 here. That lands us on a continent going from D to N. So now we're going to go from D to N, so that the modal range would then be the 2 to the 7 modal range. That's going to be a distance of a 9 note away from the Dorian, which would be the 5th modal half step, which would be the 6th scale degree. So we normally call that a 9 note away major 6th, but it's the 5th scale degree, and it's 9 notes away. That's in the Ionian. It's a major, so it's in the major, it's in the Ionian. It's not in the Aeolian. So here's where we have the interval for a minor mode that is different from the main minor, the minor scale. So that's why, again, this major and minor thing doesn't really work for all the intervals. You're still going to have to memorize the intervals if you really want to know these other modes, because only the third follows this convention all the way through, that the majors are major, the minor and the perfects are in both, right? That's the only way, the only one that works in completely is the third interval, really, pretty much. Anyway, let's go to the next one. So now we're going to say we want to go to the next one down. So we're going to say Dorian. We're going to go after the Locrian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 brings us to the Ionian. So the Dorian to the Ionian. If I'm on the Dorian, how far is that? Down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to get to the Ionian. So we're looking for a 10 distance. So we're going to go to the modal range of a DI, Dorian to the Ionian. That's going to be 2 to the 1. Now, the 1, I have to do this, 2 to the 1. The 1 doesn't mean I'm going backwards to the 1. I'm counting on my fingers, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 6, 6 away. So it's a 9 note away D, 6th modal half step, which would be the 7th scale degree. So you can see over here, we usually call that a 10 note, wait a second, I'm on the 10 note away. It's 10 note away. A 10 note away from the Dorian, 6th modal half step, which would normally be called a 10 note away minor 7, right? But it's the 6 modal half steps away, and that is not in the major mode. It is in the Aeolian mode because it's the minor distance. So that 10 note away is that minor 7. All right, let's add the ones that are in the middle now. So now I'm going to say, okay, if I go from just after the D, DD plus, that lands us in the ocean. So if I go 1 note away, that's going to take me from a 2, the Dorian, to a 2.5, landing me in the ocean. Distance will be 1 note away from the Dorian, gives me 0.5 in terms of modal half steps. In other words, if I'm on the D and I go one note away, I'm in the ocean. That means I'm right. I didn't make it to the P yet. I drowned. The shark ate me on the way to the ocean, and then people laughed at me because my music didn't sound right because it was out of key too much. So then the dy plus, if we go this one, we're going right after here, so right after the Lydian, it's going to be the 2 to the 4.5, so the distance is going to be a 4 note away, d 2.5 modal half steps. So in other words, if I go 4 notes away, 1, 2, 3, 4, just after the Lydian, I don't make it to the Mixolydian yet. All right, what about this one? This is going to be a dx plus, so that means I'm going from the 2 to the 5.5. We're going to say that's going to be a 6 note away, D 3.5 modal half step. So if I'm on the D and I go 6 notes up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right after the Mixolydian continent, but I drowned in the ocean once again. This time a jellyfish stung me. It wasn't a shark this time. You always blame it on the sharks, but there's a bunch of stuff that can kill you in the ocean. Electric jellyfish got me. So this is going to be a 2 to a 6.5. So now we're going to say this is going to be an 8 note away from the Dorian, 4.5 modal half steps. So if I go 8 up from the Dorian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, I'm in the ocean right after the Aeolian. And then finally, if I go to the di plus, then we go to a 2 to a 1.5. That's going to be an 11 note away, D 6.5 modal half steps. So 11 note away from Dorian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Boom. Back in the ocean, in that green ocean. Okay, so let's do the other mode, see if we can finish this off for the minor modes. I'm going to unhide, going from T to AA, right click, unhide. And this time I would like to see after the Dorian, I'm going to add the Phrygian. So let's go after the Dorian. So here's the end of the Dorian. So after the Dorian, I'm going to add 3 here, right click, insert, and we'll go to the Phrygian. So now let me hide. I'm actually going to hide the Dorian. Right click and hide these. And I'm going to hide the everything after this point as well, except the Aeolian. I still want to see the Aeolian. So let's hide to here, right click and hide. So now I'm going to look at the Phrygian, which is the other minor mode as compared to the main minor and the main major. The main minor and the main major. Okay. Let's call this then. This is going to be the Dorian modal range. And this will be the number for the modal range. And this will be I'll just call this the D for Dorian. All right. Wait, no, I'm not on Dorian. I am now I'm on the Phrygian, P. Phrygian, and then we'll make this a P. All right, that's better. All right. So if we're on the Phrygian, so here's the Phrygian, we're going to be there. So if our modal range starts at P to P, we didn't go anywhere. So that's going to be, of course, 3 to 3. Distance is going to be 0 note half steps from the Phrygian, 0 modal half steps. All right. And then the next one is if I go from the P to the Y, how far is that? Oh my goodness, it's only 1 note away. That's the only time the first step I take goes to another landmass. It doesn't go into the ocean. So that's cool. So that's where the Phrygian is weird. PY is going to be a 3, 4, 1 note away. Let's do this 3 to 4 from the Phrygian to the Lydian. From the distance terminology, it's 1 note away. It's only 1 note away. P, first modal half step, which would be the second scale degree. So we normally call that a 1 note away minor second, which is funny because it's not in the minor scale, right? It's only minor because it wasn't in the major scale and they didn't want to call it perfect for whatever reason. So they made it minor, even though it's not in the minor scale or in the Dorian scale, but it is in the scale that's even more minor than the main minor, the Phrygian. The Phrygian has that one in it. All right, that's interesting. Let's say we go down another one from the Phrygian and we go down 1, 2 modal half steps. How far? So if we go from the P to the X. So if we go here, 1, 2, 3, that's 3 notes away. 3 notes away. So that's going to be a PX modal range, Phrygian to Mixolydian, which I'm going to say is a 3-5 modal range. It's going to be a distance of 3 notes away from the Phrygian, which is going to be the second modal half step, which would give us the third scale degree. So we normally call that a 3-note away minor third. That's the distinguishing factor between the majors and the minors. That's the one that actually works. All the majors have a major 4-note away major. All the minors have a minor. So 3-note away. But I want to know it by the distance, not simply by the shape. And that's why I think this distance term is actually more descriptive, better, less confusing. Although you're going to have to deal with the fact that, you have to talk to people that are going to be not using that term. But anyway, it's still better. That's the point. So we go from P to the one after that. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3. 3 modal half steps up to the A or Aeolian. So how long is that in note-wise from the P? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 notes away. So we're on this 5. And that's going to be then the PA modal range, which is going from the 3, P, Phrygian, to the 6, Aeolian. Distance is going to be 5 note away, P for the Phrygian node from the Phrygian continent, third modal half step, which would be the 4th scale degree. So we would normally call that a 5-note away perfect 4th, right? So, and that, because it's perfect, we can see it's in the Ionian, it's in the Aeolian, and it is in the Phrygian. It's not in all the modes though, because it's not in the Lydian, which we talked about before. So it's not, the convention kind of works, but I want to know it again by distance. The 5 notes away is the thing that should be telling me that it's what it is, right? Not the fact that it has a name of the perfect. The perfect should be describing the distance. The distance is the thing that's important. So now we're going to say, okay, what if I go to the next one, the one after the A? So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 modal half steps up. So P to the N, which is Locrian, Phrygian to Locrian. How far is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's 7 notes away. Here's my 7. So this is going to go from the P to the N, modal range, Phrygian to Locrian. That's going to be a distance of 3 to 7, modal range in Nashville numbers. Then the distance terminology is going to be a 7-note away from the Phrygian continent, which would be the 4th modal half step away. So that's going to be the idea there. So we normally call that a 7-note away perfect 5th. Right, and again, it's perfect. So it's in the Ionian, it's in the Aeolian, and it's in most of the modes, but not in all the modes. It won't be in the Locrian mode, for example. And again, I want to know it by distance. The 7 notes away is the thing that should tell me that what the interval is, not necessarily the name of it, although it'd be nice to know it multiple ways. But anyway, let's go to the next one. P 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the I. So that's 5 modal half steps. So let's go from this P up to the I, Ionian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's 8 notes away. 8 notes away. So we're going to say this is a modal range of PI. It's going to have a distance of 3 to 1. Now again, 3 to 1 is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. 5 modal half steps because we're going up around. So we're going to say this is going to be a total distance of 8 note half steps from the node of the Phrygian, 5 modal half steps away. So that's going to be that one, and that one we normally call an 8 note away minor 6. So I would like to call it an 8 note away Phrygian 5. Meaning it's going from this location. The 8 note away is the thing that should tell us that it's normally in the minor keys, right? That's the thing that should be telling us the flavor of it should be by the number, not by the name. But you can see it's not in the Ionian, it is in the Aeolian. So the minor thing works here most of the time. It doesn't work on the Dorian, however. So we're going to say, all right, then the next one, let's say we're going to go to the next one is going to be from the Phrygian after the I, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 modal half steps to get to the D. So I'm going to go from the P to the D, Phrygian to Dorian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's 10 notes away. Here's the 10. So we're going to go over here and say this is going to, on the 10, it's going to be a modal range of Phrygian to Dorian. So the PD modal range from a natural number system, it would be then the 3 to the 2 modal range. And distance-wise, it would be a 10 note away P 6th modal half step, which would be the 7th scale degree. We normally call that a 10 note away minor 7. And again, the 10 note away is the thing that should be telling us that it's more likely to be in the minor. That's the important thing. You can see it's not in the Ionian, it is in the Aeolian, but it's not in all, like not all the Ionians don't have it, right? The Mixolydian does have it. So the 10 notes away is the thing that's important. We're going to have to then think about where it fits in which of the modes can I go 10 steps up and still land on a continent. Which ones can I not do that in? Will it land me in the ocean? All right, let's add the ones in the middle now. So if we go right after the Y, it's going to be a PY plus, let's call it, from a modal range standpoint. So we're going to go from the 3 to the 4.5. I'm going to call that then a 2 note away. So we're going to go 2 note away from the Phrygian continent, which will be a 1.5 modal half step. Meaning if I go from Phrygian up to 1, 2, I land in the ocean right after the Lydian continent. So I passed up the Lydian continent and I should have got some more supplies, but I didn't. And then I got stranded in the ocean. I just starved, just water. I dehydrated this time. Sharks didn't even eat me. They probably ate me after I died, but I died from dehydration. It wasn't the sharks' fault. They were just cleaning me up, cleaning up the ocean after I died from dehydration this time. So this one is going to be then a 3 to a 5.5. And so now we're going to say if we go up 4 from P continent, that's going to give us the 2.5, landing us in the ocean. So if I go up from P up by 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 lands us in the ocean right after the Mixolydian. Okay, let's say we go to the one after the Aeolian. So we go from PA just after Aeolian. And we're going to say that goes from the 3 to the 6.5. So that means I'm going 6 notes away from the P continent to 3.5 in the ocean. So if I go 6 up from P, here I am on continent Phrygian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lands me in the ocean right after the Aeolian continent. All right, what if I go right after the P? PI plus is going to go from a modal range of 3 to 1.5. So we're going to go 9 note away from the Phrygian continent. It's going to give us to a 5.5. So if I go 9 notes away from Phrygian continent, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lands me in the ocean right after the Ionian continent. Finally, if I go right after the PD plus, we're going to say that takes me from 3 to 2.5. That's going to be an 11 note away from the Phrygian continent, 2 to 6.5. So if I go from Phrygian and I go 11 notes up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, gets me in the ocean right after the Dorian. So I really think that, like, I know that this concept of naming has complexity to it, but I don't think you can get around the complexity. I think the normal naming convention actually, again, leads us to make assumptions about how the minor modes should be and what the major modes should be, because the naming convention kind of gives the indication that all the minor modes should have the minor intervals and all the major modes should have the major intervals. But no, this naming convention is simply based on the major scale in essence, and all of the other modes are kind of, again, shoehorned into it. So it would be nicer if we're going to have scale degrees and not just distance and half steps, it would be better to name it this way, to name the continent that you're doing the distance from, the node that you're doing the distance from, and then memorize the distance as the important thing, not the fact that it says major or minor, right? A 10 note away distance is that sound that gives you that minory sound with that distance. It gives you the bluesy sound on a Mixolydian, right? And So that's the idea. All right, so we'll get, that's it for now.